It's taken me way longer than I anticipated to get this video out. We've been so busy the last few months that this one got shoved on the back burner. I recorded the voiceover, and when I listened to it, I realized that my last remaining microphone was done for. It was pretty much nothing but static, so we had to get a new one before I could finish it. This is my first time using it after setting it up, and I have no clue what I'm doing, so I'm aware it probably doesn't sound the greatest, but I'll try to get all the technical difficulties ironed out soon. I'm going to be touching on some sensitive topics throughout this video, so viewer discretion is advised. I want to preface this conversation with some definitions. When I use the word stray, I'm using it as an umbrella term to describe any unowned cat living outside. It could have been a pet at one point that was abandoned, it could be a friendly cat born on the streets, or it could be a feral cat. When I say feral, I'm specifically referring to cats who haven't had contact with humans or, upon encountering humans, have a strong fear or stress response and would need socialization in order to handle them without a fight ensuing. TNR is short for Trap, Neuter, Return. Technically, what we do is TNVR because of the inclusion of vaccines, but we do a bunch of other stuff too, so I always just say TNR to make it easier for people to understand. There are a lot of people who strongly dislike TNR because they think there's some magical place out there that all these cats can go where everything is just inexplicably paid for and maintained. The reality of it is, there just isn't enough money, time, space, resources, or willing and responsible people participating in foster and adoption to make that happen. So this is the next best thing you can do for them. Bindi showed up in September of 2024. She looked about 6 months old at the time and was immediately curious of me. She wasn't afraid or especially skittish, which was unusual for a stray I've never seen before. Shortly after Bindi showed up, during the early morning hours of October 19th, a crying Bubbles made her appearance in the yard. Her eyes had sealed themselves shut with infection, so she had been effectively blinded and desperately needed help. Squiggy's kittens had recently overcome an eye infection with the help of some antibiotic ointment, so I used what I had left to save her sight. They looked about the same age and almost seemed to recognize each other, so I just always assumed they were sisters that found their way back to each other. They lived together with Toofus and Mufus throughout the fall and winter months. Droopus was a regular visitor and got along well with the ladies. He was such a little gentleman. Winter was pretty harsh last year. We had a lot of snow, and it lingered around a long time. If it wasn't snowy or icy, it was muddy. Mufus didn't make it through February. He had been sick for a while, but I was saving up to finish vetting Toofus to bring her into the shelter, and then TNR, Bindi, and Bubbles. So I rolled the dice on the ones I thought I could do the most to help. I don't think I could have afforded to save him from whatever all he had wrong with him had I taken him in, but I do feel terrible that he had to suffer out there for as long as he did. The last time I saw him, he stopped by the food bowl for a quick bite and staggered off into the snowstorm we were having that night, never to be seen again. Toofus was finished with her vetting and brought in April. With just the 2 girls left in the yard to fend for themselves, it was time to focus on getting them fixed up. There's a big difference between domesticated animals and captive wildlife. The animals you would typically see in a zoo are considered captive wildlife. Things like dogs or cats, or even pigeons, are domesticated animals. They evolved alongside humans and rely on human intervention for their survival. Something to note is that cats and dogs have the mental acuity of toddlers. I hear a lot of people who don't want to be bothered to keep their pets safe make the excuse that it's cruel to keep them inside because they're animals and they want out. I hate how often I have to remind people of this, but people are animals too. Is it also cruel for someone not to let their unsupervised toddlers play in traffic just because they want to? No. You're the adult in the room. Take them out on a leash or get them an outdoor enclosure if you're so worried about it. Now, I'm familiar with places, for instance, a lot of Europe, where there really aren't a significant amount of natural predators and they aren't as heavily card dependent as we are in the United States. They usually have mandatory neutering and microchipping laws as well. Overall, it's far safer for them to be letting their cats roam free than it would be here. But it still isn't all rainbows and sunshine. However, the majority of complaints are negligible and amount to someone's indoor-outdoor cat with dietary restrictions, like getting fed something different by a neighbor, your cat's outside nibbling on carcasses and literal trash when you're not watching them, getting into the wrong food should be the least of your concern at that point. The average lifespan for an outdoor cat is 2 to 5 years, as opposed to 15 to 17 years for indoor cats, according to a study conducted by UC Davis. The only cats that have made it out here much longer than a year are Toofus and Mama Oofus. The savvy, resourceful cats like that tend to skew the average upwards. The vast majority don't make it through the first few months of life, and the ones who do are usually gone right around a year. I was a few days away from scheduling her TNR appointment on May 16th when baby Bubbles very suddenly passed away. The money I had excitedly been setting aside for her vet visit was spent on a cremation instead. Bindi was left confused and very lonely. She spent the following days searching for her sister. Her appointment was made almost immediately after, but they were booked for spays until the 26th of August. With how far away her appointment day was, she would have been pregnant, given birth, and then probably been pregnant again by the time they would have seen her, so my mom offered to foster her at her house in the meantime. It's probably the only reason she made it to her appointment date unscathed. Unfixed female cats run the risk of developing potentially fatal uterine infections. It looks like we got to her just in time. She appeared to be in the beginning stages of pyometria. I've always assumed that's probably what got her sister Bubbles, so I'm really glad that we caught it because that would have been so devastating. Tomcats can be really violent with them as well. Toofus ended up with a massive gash on her neck one time because of it. A few years back, there was a cat in heat that got drowned by a relentless Tom that followed her into my mom's pond. The horror stories are endless. She adapted to indoor life immediately and showed no interest in returning to the outdoors, so she decided to adopt her instead. Her days of struggle are officially over. There's something called the vacuum effect, where when you remove strays, new strays will come to take their place, so it's often frowned upon to home them. I would be a lot more hesitant to do it if they lived longer, but they won't be out there long anyway, so I see no real harm in taking the friendly ones that seek it out. Toofus is a perfect example. It wasn't until she started trying to pry my door open and get inside my house that I decided to take her in. Feral cats should ideally be left outside unless it's not possible to do so. Trying to house them can be potentially hazardous if they freak out, like they usually do. They can seriously injure themselves and other animals, or even you in the process of trying to escape confinement. Because of how limited the ability for human intervention with feral cats is, they're usually doomed to a lot of suffering. This is why it's so important to prevent new ones by spaying and neutering your pets. Although I was able to get her into a home, we had initially planned on releasing her back out like any other TNR we would do. Aside from needing a little extra observation and medication twice daily, this would have been a fairly routine TNR. None of the services I paid for were particularly expensive, and in this case, I was able to shave off some of the costs like the snap test and ear tipping that I usually pay for, and that's another $50 that I didn't have to spend. It runs me $250 to $300 to TNR the average female cat. It's about $100 less for boys because a neuter is only $50 and I don't get the pregnant or in heat charge for them. That's assuming there isn't anything wrong like what we just had happen with Spoingus and Bingus, where they needed $400 worth of vet care and hands-on treatment for 3 weeks before they could even consider operating on them. The low-cost TNR clinic closest to me isn't cheap enough and it's almost an hour away. The prices are closely comparable to what I'm already paying, and once you pay for gas, it's maybe $10 to $20 cheaper to take them there. These aren't normal appointments where you go in for 20 minutes and then leave afterwards either. They get dropped off in the morning and picked up in the evening. You either have to stay in town all day or drive back and forth. If you don't have reliable transportation, that quickly becomes dangerous. You can easily break down in the middle of nowhere out here where you may be forced to leave your vehicle and walk away to get cell service to call for help. And by the time it arrives, if the weather isn't cooperative, you could have a bunch of dead cats in cages in the back of your car. We get both extreme heat and cold, and there are really only a handful of months out of the year it would be safe to take that risk. The same thing applies to housing them while you wait for appointments or to release them. If you don't have somewhere temperature controlled, you've got 3 to 5 months max where you can safely pull it off. In my case, I have access to a garage with no heating or cooling, and that's really the only place I can keep them while I wait. I say this all to say that this is meticulous work that doesn't come easy and isn't as cheap as people would often like to make it out to be. And when it is super cheap, there can be really serious quality issues within the clinic that make you not want to use them. I've seen a lot of the bigger TNR organizations trying to browbeat people into it recently. The amount of posts I've seen telling people it's their responsibility to TNR any cat they feed is unhinged. They usually add in something along the lines of, if you can leave a bowl of food out, you can TNR them, as if to insinuate that everyone is just being lazy about it. First of all, I don't know what kind of inhospitable wastelands these people live in where there's no human trash to eat, no small critters or bugs to hunt, or no people leaving out food for their own outdoor animals that they can eat from, but I moved into a neighborhood that was positively overflowing with unfed stray cats, and they didn't starve to death or magically discover birth control. They were, however, extremely aggressive. They fought each other for every scrap they could find, leading to constant injuries. They were either real thin or pregnant, and perpetually sick. I assume they were probably pretty miserable living like that, and at no fault of their own. I feel like most of these people read somewhere that animals stop mating when conditions are bad, but I don't think they understand how catastrophically bad the situation has to be for them to just stop procreating altogether. We're not talking an extinction level event here. The argument of, if you feed them, you're breeding them, is specious as hell. At least now we can take our trash to the curb at night without it being demolished by starving strays before morning pickup. You can leave a bird feeder out without a congress of cats beneath it waiting for an easy meal and then spreading bird flu around. You can get your lost kitty back because someone in the neighborhood recognizes that it doesn't belong out there. The cats here are sick far less often, not destroying our local wildlife to the point they previously were, and don't have to suffer unnecessary hunger. I don't think they realize how out of touch with reality it actually sounds to normal people who aren't locked in a rescue echo chamber. I started leaving food out on a regular basis in the first place because I left a bowl out for Rufus one night and put a camera on it. Come to find out, we had like 20 to 30 strays roaming the neighborhood that I had never even seen before. I knew we had some, but I would have never guessed it was like that. Most of them would exclusively come out at night when there were no people around. Over time, they get more comfortable moving around during daylight hours and aren't as quick to jump ship if they see a human. It's not that putting a bowl of food out made a load of cats materialize out of thin air, it just made them visible when they otherwise wouldn't have been. There were quite a few cats that had come and gone by that point, but unfortunately, I have very few pictures and videos of them. Realizing that there were so many in my area alone whose suffering was completely unseen and unacknowledged is why I started documenting their lives out there like this to begin with. As one person with a limited budget and an entire shelter to run, I can only TNR so many of them. Although it makes a world of difference to the individual cats I get to help, it only works as a mechanism to control the population when you're able to get most or all of them. As much as I advocate that people participate in TNR when possible, this nearly militant stance takes the responsibility off of pet owners who abandon their pets in the first place and governing bodies who collect taxes from us so that they can fund public services like animal control and TNR programs, and it puts it onto people who are already doing more than they're actually responsible for. Not everyone has this kind of money to throw around at a problem. Some people live in apartments with nowhere to stash them in between. Some people are disabled. Some people have unreliable transportation or no transportation at all. Maybe they don't have time to mess around driving cats all over Timbuktu, or organizing all these things for someone else to do for them. There are a lot of people who aren't even able to meet their own basic needs. The list of barriers could go on forever, so it's really obnoxious to make demands of strangers in positions you know nothing about. Unless you want to pay for it and do it for them, trying to force them into participating won't have a pretty outcome. It's gonna alienate people like me who at one point wasn't in anywhere near a position to facilitate a TNR. It's going to result in animals with treatable medical conditions not being given critical care before they're opened up for a surgery because people can't afford the extras, or aren't able to scrub ringworm off a feral cat for 3+ weeks before they continue any further. Preventable illnesses and parasites will spread just as bad if not worse than they already do because good luck getting a hold of them a second time if anything goes wrong. I know there are a lot of situations where people have access to programs that will do everything for them and they still refuse for various, usually misguided reasons, but that's a totally different conversation and very much the exception to the rule. Most people simply lack access to quality services. I want the cats that get TNR to actually be able to benefit from the investments in their health that we make. Amateur hour has consequences just like anything else. You don't have to gatekeep or anything, but maybe let's not invite it in with such fervor. If you're a large organization who's looking to swing your dick around at someone, try private equity. That's who's buying up all the housing and telling people they can't have pets or charging exorbitant pet rents. That's also who's buying up veterinary clinics and pricing everyone out of care. The same thing we see with hospital closures is coming for your favorite local vet clinic too. They're gonna run them dry and scrap them out for tax write-offs. Inflation is another obvious culprit. I watched a really good video the other day about its effects on pet owners, so I'll link it in the comments with a few other relevant videos below. We are hurtling towards a very visible cliff here. If someone doesn't pump the brakes, we're all going over. I will say, in the time it's taken me to actually get this voiceover recorded, it's calmed down quite a bit. I've been seeing way fewer of these posts over the last month or so I think they've probably got enough backlash that they've started wording these a little more carefully. What I've noticed take its place, though, is every time someone so much as mentions a stray cat in a post, there's a ton of people in the comments being obnoxious about it. There are 1,000,001 reasons people might not be able to pull it off, and they don't owe you a 4-page essay on why not just to avoid being inundated with your unsolicited advice. I want to point out that this is why everyone has posting on We now. It doesn't matter how wholesome the content you post is, you'll get devoured by a bunch of keyboard crusaders who have probably never even gotten their own hands dirty. I had a YouTube channel before we built the shelter where I just showed stray cats stopping by the food bowls for a quick snack, and the overwhelming majority of my comment section would be people telling me what a horrible monster I am for not taking them all in and finding them homes. Like, again, I'm not made of money. Not to mention the risk that poses to my own animals, or that would constitute animal hoarding and is illegal. I've decided that going forward, I'm responding to all these demands with a donation link to our TNR fund. I'm more than happy to do the work if you want to pay for it, but there are large swaths of the population that just aren't fortunate enough to have access to those things. So perhaps we could all just be a little more understanding. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to this. As much as we all dote on the benefits of TNR, nothing is perfect, and if you want people to take you seriously, you have to be willing to acknowledge the flaws in the system and leave space for those who fall outside what you consider the normal situation to be. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And please help your local strays out however you're most able to, even if you're not able to TNR them yourself, maybe you can help them survive long enough to make their way to someone who can. Now, let's move on and break down this vet bill. The spay is a flat $100, and all the anesthesia and such gets discounted off at the end. There's an extra $50 charge if you want an IV catheter. Normally for a spay, I go ahead and opt for that since it's such an invasive procedure, but I was trying to stay within a reasonable budget, so I abstained this time. This extra $45 charge for being pregnant or in heat is because of the extra blood flow to the area. It can cost them extra time and complicate things while they're digging around in there. I always get these because when are they ever not pregnant or in heat, but this time it was her infection. The Clavamox drops are antibiotics to treat the infection. Her rabies vaccine is only 10, but the CVRPP is 60. That's the same as an FVRCP vaccine in that it protects from feline viral rhinotracheitis or herpes, calicivirus, and panleukopenia, otherwise known as distemper or parvo. But this one has the added protection against feline leukemia as well. I always highly recommend protecting your cats from leukemia as it can be passed around fairly easily. We got all of this for just under $300 and the discount of $118 for the anesthesia. I keep extensive records of all the cats in our care, but the strays usually have pretty thin files. I always send them out with copies of everything and keep a set for my own records. The adoption certificate is really just a cute novelty, but I like doing them. If it weren't my mom, I'd also include some pamphlets, but she's got an unlimited supply straight from the tap, so I don't think she needs any extras. Bindi is a lucky case. She was friendly, wanted in, integrated well once she was finally inside, and will get to spend the remainder of her life in comfort. Her days of braving bad weather and diseases are done. She won't be at risk of being run over or becoming another animal's lunch ever again. She escaped the eventuality of homeless motherhood and the inevitable grief that accompanies it. In the time she was out there, she watched the seasons change, she watched us build a shelter where there had only ever previously been a patch of grass, she watched all her friends disappear one by one until she was the last man standing. And then one day, everything changed. After nearly a year, our time together has come to an end. But when one folder closes, another one opens. Surely, there will be more to come in the future. For the first time in years, the yard is finally empty. I'll admit, it feels a little lonely out there, but it was a job well done.